Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Dunya Medhat, and I'm a junior consultant at Turner & Townsend. We're joined today by Luke Hurd at Communities and Housing Investment Consortium, or Chic. This is a retrofit information support and expertise RISE event, which is fully funded by the Department of Energy Security and Net Zero, delivered by Turner & Townsend. Thank you all again for joining. I will now hand over to Luke to start our presentation for today.
Thank you, Dunya. Good afternoon, all. So thank you very much, everybody, for coming along to today's session. What I'm going to be sort of talking about is Chic, who we are, what we do, and what we have in terms of a consortium offer to the sector to support the decarbonisation journey. So a little bit about Chic. Chic has been around for 15 years. We were incorporated in the Midlands and ARC Consultancy, who is the agent for Chic. Over the last 15 years, we have developed the business and sort of grown to where we are now. We now have over 250 members, predominantly social housing, local authorities and housing associations. We actually manage over almost 1,400 suppliers now across our various DPSs and frameworks. We've got 45 individual routes to market, and we look after circa sort of 220 million homes across the sector. So we deliver in the region of about £270 million worth of asset management work. Where we operate, Chic is free to join for our members, and we are a not-for-profit. It's available to any public sector organisation. So whilst we predominantly operate in the housing sector, we are all asset managers by sort of background who do sort of compliant procurement. So the housing sector is most definitely our sort of key focus, but we can operate across other public sector organisations as well. We are a not-for-profit. Costs, our fees are recuperated through what we call trickle fees, which is costs that are added onto the core rates within a contract, and we recover them from the supply chain. So in terms of our overall services, we've got 8 core services that we operate, our frameworks and DPSs. Obviously, the one we're here to talk about today is decarbonisation and renewables, but just on that slide there is the other core services that we sort of manage frameworks and routes to market under. One thing that we are quite keen on as a consortium is actually understanding how we deliver value for money through these 8 services, and more specifically how we can achieve better value for the sector by kind of separation of labour and materials and understanding the full cost, not just of procurement but of the sort of delivery models across our services. So what are we here to talk about today? So SHDF and sort of moving into wave 3. I'm sure this has been bandied around now for quite a number of years, and everybody is fully sort of aware of what the aims of the SHDF funding are. For us, it was about not just delivering the sort of 2050 net zero sort of target, but it's also about understanding how we as a consortium can actually help the sector to achieve the wider aims and objectives that the SHDF funding is set up to achieve. So what were some of the challenges that we kind of understood and encountered, certainly over the last few years, and more sort of recently as well, moving into wave 3? We certainly understood that there was an initial challenge into the sector with emerging markets. There was a lot of new entrants entering the sector, whether they be specialist M&E providers delivering sort of retrofit solar panels, air source, ground source, heat pumps, etc. But there was also a lot of sort of, because of the new entrants, there was a lot of micro and SMEs coming into the sector. What we then tried to do is try to understand with these new entrants, actually how can the sector utilise their expertise while still kind of gaining their consensus around the ability to deliver to the sector. Because of that, there was a lot of untested models. Certainly the demonstrator in wave 1 kind of proved that there was a lot of work that needed to be done around sort of specifications and development. One area that sort of came to the forefront for us quite quickly when we were initially supporting demonstrator and some of the wave 1 projects was actually procurement itself wasn't always factored into the planning stage of delivery. And procurement can, as we all know, end up being quite time consuming and costly. And it can be very, very difficult, if not understood at the very beginning, to really detail how you achieve value for money out of the procurement. The other key challenge that I think sort of emerged from this journey that we've all been on was around sort of demarcation of liabilities. Who is responsible if you have a separate PAS 2035 assessor coordinator designer to your principal contractor? It's how actually do you understand where the liabilities sit around, what are the insurances that need to be put in place, and kind of what's the length of warranties that you need, particularly if we're moving into the more sort of low energy heat and energy technologies at the moment. One thing that we were advising our members quite early on was really to understand what kind of contract do you want? How do you want to approach the marketplace as it was maturing? What was the route to market that you were looking at? So they really needed to consider, was it a single source contract, locally procured, or were you going to look at frameworks and a dynamic purchasing system through a consortium such as Chic? What that needed to be understood then was actually what's the value of the works coming through, what's the market forces that are pulling on that market at that time. More specifically, because it was very quickly understood that actually the labour force in the sector probably wasn't sufficient to deliver to achieve the 2050 targets. It is much further along that journey now, but certainly early on there was a lot of sort of key, perhaps tier one contractors who were securing quite a bit of work, and then it was trying to understand actually how their labour force could deliver. So understanding those sort of market forces was quite critical early on. The other one that we were quite keen to get people to consider is actually the work streams. What are you actually procuring under a decarbonisation strategy, and how does that link for further into your wider sort of asset management and strategic asset management processes and sort of plans that had in place? That wasn't always very clearly defined, certainly very early on in this sort of process. So what kind of have we learnt over the last few years? Well, certainly one size doesn't fit all. There isn't a single solution for delivering decarbonisation. The very nature of PAS 2035 and achieving customer approval for the decarbonisation works that is going on very much is tied to the individual property, not just the bricks and mortar, how the property has been sort of built, but also how it's been lived in, how your residents, how our tenants are actually utilising the space that they use, which means that each project, each programme does need to be individually designed and understood. The other area that came to light quite quickly was around sort of getting properties decarb ready. So certainly during the demonstrator and wave one, projects were pushed out to the market to deliver fabric first works. And then when contractors actually got on site and sort of coordinators and assessors went out to start doing the surveys, it was identified that the properties themselves needed quite a bit of work and quite a bit of cost spent on them, even to be able to deliver the first decarbonisation. And these can be examples of removal of external lights, satellite dishes, etc., to be able to fit external wall insulation. These costs weren't very well sort of understood very early on. The other thing that we're quite keen to understand as part of our role in supporting these projects is actually what the data looks like. What are you basing your projects, your future decarbonisation strategies on? How up to date is that information, and how coordinated across our members is that asset information? The better the information, the better the planning, and therefore the better the projects that achieve out of it. One other sort of area that I think has come out, particularly from the learning, is specifically around sort of tenant engagement and the challenge that has posed to not just our members in the sector, but also the contracting market, and being able to bring our sort of tenants along the journey hasn't always helped with sort of poor press coverage, certainly around sort of air source heat pumps. And I've put on that slide there a little bit of fake news. I think it's very easy for when things go wrong for it to be focused on, rather than actually always focusing on the good work that is being done out into the sector. The other learning that was very quickly identified was that new technologies are emerging at pace, and more critically, it's about where those technologies are sourced from. More recently, we have been tasked with trying to understand actually locally sourced, so UK-wide manufacturing of things like solar panels, etc., is now becoming a sort of key driver behind behind the sector procurement and what people want to achieve. Understanding what the sector can and the manufacturing sector can actually deliver is also critical to understand how we move forward with these decarbonisation strategies. So all of those challenges, all of those considerations and the learning over the last few years, what was the sort of key goal for Chic? Well, we wanted to come to market with solutions that allowed not just a framework, which is fixed for a 4-year period under the current regulations, but also understanding how the sector can react to those emerging markets, react to new SMEs that are bringing expertise to the sector, while still actually understanding the financial and the insurance backup that they need to be able to deliver these projects. So we wanted to develop solutions that enabled the market to really value engineer what they needed to deliver the overall project, certainly at bid stage, all the way through to procurement and then delivery on site, and ultimately achieving a final trust mark approval against schemes. One thing we've introduced to help support us with that is the FAC Gold Standard. Now, those who don't know, the FAC Gold Standard was developed predominantly for the construction industry. However, there are some excellent behaviours, I would say, in terms of how members, contractors, consultants collaborate to deliver projects. And what we did as an organisation, aside from our new build framework, which is currently going through the final gold standard assessment, is adopt the principles of the FAC one across all of our other frameworks, and Health to Homes, which I'll come on to shortly, being a principal framework with that. What that does is it allows us to reduce some of the complexity and costs for procurement, establish some sort of not fully standardised, but more informed standard models of delivery and supply chain engagement, and certainly feeding sort of lessons learned and trying to sort of bring that 360-degree loop back in to understand what has gone right, what doesn't work quite so effectively, and therefore be able to advise members for the future actually what is the best route to market to go down. So what have we actually developed? So Chic itself, we've got a couple of routes to market for the sector. DPS, our 5 DPSs there at the top in the boxes, critical for what we deliver, and I'll talk a little bit more about the DPS in a moment. And then we've got our Healthy Homes framework, which is a new framework which was launched this year, specifically to deliver wider funded works into the sector. What we've incorporated under that from a procurement perspective is the standard sort of questionnaire. So we undertake a lot of evaluation of the suppliers when they join either the DPS or the framework, really to make sure that their firms are fit and ready to be able to deliver the works into the sector. We review past performance, technical competency, capacity. We are also affiliated and partnered with the construction line. So Chic itself works very closely with the construction line to understand actually what the values of work that people, the firms out there can actually deliver to bring some assurance back into the sector. We review licenses and accreditations, as past 2030 for the installers, 2035 for the consultants, and their trust mark approval ratings. What we then do over the top of that is we have some standard sort of contractual terms and commercial arrangements which we can support the sector with. And what we're now looking at moving forward is sort of wider supply chain management and performance management. Again, coming back to that 360 loop back to the sector to understand what goes right and what hasn't gone quite so right, and make sure that the sector learns from those. So our DPS, the DPS, again, for those who aren't fully aware of the dynamic purchasing system, the very nature of it under the current regulations allows for contractors and suppliers to join at any time. There is no maximum duration on contracts that can be let under a DPS, but we do have to run it as a further competition, very much about testing the market and making sure that the market can deliver the specific requirements of members. It is fully compliant with the PCR 2015. I know that we are moving into the Procurement Act and the new Procurement Act very shortly in October. However, the current DPS is still under the existing regulations. Authorities themselves, so our members, can join and access the DPS at any point and run their further competitions. What it does mean is through a DPS, we can almost guarantee that the sector is going to get sort of cost efficiencies because of the nature of the further competition. It does put the supply chain market into that competitive environment, which does then mean that overall the procurement can be fairly comfortable that it's going to achieve sort of value for money dependent on the requirements of our members. So the actual DPSs that we have, we've got 5 DPSs that are available to the sector. DPS 1 is more of the sort of upfront consultancy. Through that DPS, we have 34 firms, so individual firms that are available in the country. DPS 2, which is designers and managing agents. Again, some of the learning that we understood as a consortium quite early on is not every member authority out there wants the same designer as they have coordinators. They sometimes like to separate out those roles and responsibilities. More importantly, members did require kind of managing agent, a supporting consultant to sit client side to support them in how they deliver their asset management and decarbonisation strategy. We've got 15 firms that are available through there. Installers speaks for itself, full range from mechanical, electrical, all the way through to fabric first. Some of these individual specialists, so EWI specialists, for example, and some are for sort of tier 1 turnkey contractors. And we've got 81 contractors available through that DPS. Now, materials and manufacturers, I mentioned earlier on in the presentation, one of the key sort of drivers for Chic has always been about trying to understand the cost benefit of separation of labour and materials. So through our supply chain team and our wider sort of Chic team, we've taken it upon ourselves to engage quite heavily with the manufacturing sector out there and understand what they can deliver and how best value it can be achieved through engaging with manufacturers and distributors directly to deliver not just decarbonisation works, but wider asset management works. So we set up that DPS specifically to target that sector, and currently we have 12 individual manufacturers ranging from solar panels through to heat pumps, all the way through to EWI systems and IWI systems, who can actually be engaged and be brought along the procurement journey. Even if our members aren't purchasing directly from them, they can actually be incorporated into the procurement so that at the very outset, you understand the true cost base and the value for money. The last DPS that we have is our evaluators and monitoring technology. This is all about assurance. So this was about being able to engage firms out there who can specifically audit the works that has been carried out, not just from a compliance perspective, but also from a trust mark perspective. And through that DPS, we have 6 firms available. Now, on top of the DPS, we also have Healthy Homes Framework, which is our new framework. Why Healthy Homes? Because we understood very quickly that actually delivering decarbonisation isn't just about delivering the retrofit works and services. It's also about understanding how the home is lived in and how we create within the sector that health to our residents and to our tenants. Because of that, we have also incorporated elements of building safety and principally damp and mould under that specific framework. There are 3 lots to the framework, again, split out into consultancy, work services, including the full sort of turnkey solution, and then the final lot is about digitisation. I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly. One of the key models within it, and this is what I think really stands our framework out from other consortia, is the consultancy is obviously based on fixed fees, costs to go out and do surveys, do whole house, condition surveys, retrofit surveys, PAS 2035 surveys, design elements, coordination elements. Those are all based on sort of fixed fees. But more importantly, the lot 2, the works and services, this has been designed as an open book costing model. So we made the strategic decision as a consortium, not to tie it down to just a schedule of rates. Our view, and through learning across projects that we've been involved with over the last few years, is that trying to understand a one-size-fits-all cost to deliver the kind of works that need to be done for decarbonisation doesn't work. It ends up being quite messy. There is an awful lot of variations, and actually the true cost of delivering the service isn't fully understood. So what we did with the Healthy Homes was we created a number of scenarios based on actual projects delivered, which the supply chain costed, but ultimately moving forward into individual contracts. The cost model that we recommend is open book or target costing, which really does allow the contracting sector to value engineer individual projects based on what those projects require and what our members require. That is quite unique within the sector, and we think it's a better model for achieving that overarching value to our residents and our members. It is supported by the NatFed schedule of rates, so if members do want to fall back purely on the schedule of rates, we have both the planned works, the major project work schedule of rates, and the new decarbonisation NatFed schedule of rates, which are also included within the sort of contractual terms. Digitisation. The digitisation lot was more about us trying to understand actually how we measure the outputs from the work that we've done. So it includes two work streams, which I'll talk about in a bit more detail shortly. One is about digital platforms. So these are the IT systems to be able to prove and demonstrate both internally to your own boards, but also externally that the measures and the work and the investment that has been put into the properties is actually achieving what it was meant to achieve out the other end. We also have another lot on there around the smart sensors. So that's about sort of installing the sensors into the property to collect and collect data. So in terms of what's available under the consultancy, that's split into three key work streams. Asset management consultancy. So again, this is kind of upfront work. So this is working member side to understand what your data is showing, how your data can be used to inform the projects moving forward, and supporting with funding applications, etc., etc. So we have 10 firms available through that. Workstream 1B is a technical consultancy. So again, this is your sort of PAS 2035 assessors, coordinators. It includes elements of design, but we had Workstream 1C as well, specifically for design firms out there. And that just shows you the number of firms available through that. Lot two is our works and services. We have, again, strategically made the decision to separate these into sort of four key areas. Fabric first, which is still a key driver behind Wave 3, but we also understood that as we go along this journey, we need to give the options and better options for incorporating low energy heating and power. So we've got the mechanical and electrical retrofit lot, and then we have the turnkey solution. Now, the turnkey solution 2C is all about engaging a principal contractor who can deliver all of the services under Lot 1, the consultancy, as well as the works under Lot 2. So it's a full sort of turnkey solution. There are some fantastic firms out there who have developed key models around delivering that, and we wanted to incorporate that as a solution. 2D is very much around building safety. So this is understanding actually what the wider implications are of delivering decarbonisation and damper mould works. And there's 15 firms available on that. Digitisation sits there, as I say, it's the reporting and analytical tools, the platforms. We've got three key providers that can support with that, and then the smart sensors about installing. And that is all about understanding what we're doing and how we're doing it and why we're doing it and what works best for the future. We need that data, and we need to understand that data in a lot more sort of granular, a lot more granular than what we probably have done in the past. These platforms are great in terms of achieving that. So how can you access through Chic? We have a dedicated e-sourcing portal, Chic e-sourcing. It's a fully automated online portal. It's linked to all the sell-to sites. So if you decide to use our DPS as a route to market, it would most definitely go out to the wider sector, and we can onboard new entrants onto that DPS to give them opportunities. What that does mean is if you have local contractors that perhaps you've worked with previously or have emerged into your local market, and you want to give them the opportunity to bid for your work, to deliver that locally and to keep the pound within the local economy, what Chic can do is we can very quickly onboard those suppliers onto the DPS and really give them the full opportunity to bid into those works and work with the public sector. As I mentioned earlier, the supplier management, we have a simple application process through the SQ. And what we do as an organisation is we do all of those financial assurance and accreditation checks. So this is about giving you surety that when you're contracting through Chic, that you're contracting with organisations that are going to be around to deliver the works over the long term, and will actually be able to underpin what they do with the correct accreditations. As I mentioned earlier, we are partnered with Construction Line, and we work very, very closely with Construction Line to support in making sure that all of that information, that sort of compliance and assurance information, is in place and works correctly. From a commercial perspective, we've done a lot of work in trying to understand what the forms of contract are, what the pricing models need to look like in order to bring transparency to the process, and also look at how we can deliver back sort of auditable contract data, so that future bids and future strategies can actually be based on the reality of what was delivered, not just perception. Just very quickly, a little bit around the sort of forms of contract that we have. We can operate any form of contract under both the DPS and the Health Homes Framework. However, some model contracts that we have there, ranging from the RICS consultancy contract through to the JCT measured term contract, and the intermediate contractors with contractors design. Now, we've run a number of roundtables where we asked the sector, this is both members and contractors, what was the best actual form of contract for them to deliver sort of decarbonisation works. And there was a lot of discussion around is design and build with contractor, where it's a sort of a turnkey solution, or the intermediate with contractors design. What we kind of came out of that was that our determination was that probably intermediate contracts design is a most suitable form of contract. It allows contracts to be managed effectively without being overly prescriptive from a contractual point of view, and allows authorities to enter into pre-contract agreements. So if you want a turnkey solution, but at the point of procurement, you're still not sure exactly what the measures are going to be that need to be delivered, and therefore what the overall cost is. You just have a target budget, predominantly from funding through SHDF and match funding. Actually, what we can do is we can use the intermediate to enter into those kind of arrangements and allow contracting and the consultancy market to build up the actual base costs from day one. All of our contracts are overseen by Chic. We can support our members in producing them. We can tailor them to suit the specific requirements, and we can then issue them via DocuSign. So contractually is a key area that we needed to understand as a consortium and be able to support the sector through the procurement routes. So what do we have as Chic as sort of wider? Our member services team are key points of contact. So they would be the group of individuals who would work to understand their requirements. But sitting around that, we have our strategic services. So we have technical compliance support within the Chic business. So we can help actually work with our members to design their specifications, understand what the specifications are saying, and also the pricing models from a commercial perspective. What is the best commercial model that you need to achieve your long-term aims? I have a data management team, so our data analysts are constantly looking at the information that's coming through to Chic, both in terms of spend and cost, but also in terms of what is that information showing around project delivery, speed of project delivery, delays, etc., etc. So we have a business intelligence team. Our procurement team goes without saying, that's core and critical to what we do as a business, procurement house. But as I mentioned earlier, my background is in asset management and contracting, and most of the people, if not all, who work within Chic, within these various teams, all have a asset management background. So we do understand on the ground what it means to deliver these projects. We're not just procurement specialists, we are full asset management. And then the final sort of jigsaw for us was around social value. We have a partner charity, CHIP, which is Communities and Housing Investment and People, which we set up a few years ago to actually understand the social value achievements that are delivered through our contracts. We use a HAT formula to calculate that. All of our contracts require the supply chain to put 1% of the turnover value into social value activities. And outside of that, we can then work with our members to understand if there is anything more specific. And that is all managed through our social value manager under CHIP. The other thing that we've done to support the sector is we've created our order management system. So this is what I term as an Amazon for category 1 materials. It's a bespoke ordering system that allows our members to understand their material costs on a URPN basis, so unique property reference number, so you can drill down into individual costs. What's unique about the system is it allows the contracting market or our members to place an order for materials that may be coming from multiple suppliers. An example of that could be if you've got a project that is delivering solar panels, or with solar panels, you've got ridgeline, you've got roof works, you may require tiles. We can actually package all of those up into a single order. And what the system will do is the system, when that order is placed against that property, will automatically subdivide that to the key suppliers. And through the system, we can set SLAs for delivery. So what your contracting market, what your DLO, if they are delivering it on your in-house contractor, has the assurance of is that on a specific date, all of the materials required for that job will arrive on site. The system is quite innovative in that sense, and is tied down to very specific costs. So where I mentioned earlier that one of the key drivers behind Chic is about separation of labour and materials, our order management system is really there to support that agenda and that sort of strategy moving forward, and really understand what the cost base truly is. And as a quick case study, so what we worked on previously, one of our key projects, which is ongoing at the moment, and sort of wave 2.1, is with Citizen Sustainable Building Services. This was procured through the DPS at the time, and is proving to be an extremely proactive and positive sort of project that is going on. I won't talk through all of the slide there, but there's some real key drivers behind it around the energy savings, the kilowatt hour savings per year that is being delivered through that. And that project is, as I say, it is ongoing at the moment and has been a resounding success. The success came from the support, not just from Chic, but also from the contracting market, the consultancy market, but really understanding the planning stage. So there was a lot of time and effort went into planning that specific project, rather than just funding being achieved, let's get on site and deliver, because there are restrictions in terms of the time frame to actually spend the money. Much more time was spent with that project, and the reason why I wanted to case study it in that planning phase, which has really allowed the project to hit the ground running, and is very successful for the residents. You'll be glad to know that this is my final slide. So just looking to the future, what kind of things do we think that the sector needs to consider? First and foremost, undertake your surveys. Do not necessarily wait for funding to do so. Understand what the requirements are of PAS 2035, and more importantly, what the differences are between undertaking a retrofit survey and a full stock condition survey. Do them now. Collect that information, get that information into your systems, get the data from the surveys, move forward, so that actually when you come into the planning stage of your sort of decarbonisation strategy, you know that you're actually doing so off clean, full and complete information on that property and how that property is being used. The other one sort of key for us is align your asset management strategies. We still have members that are almost operating in silo for decarbonisation and not necessarily looking across their wider investment plans, their wider asset management strategies, and understanding actually how they can feed the two together or knit the two together to deliver a sort of single seamless strategy for our members. The least disruption we can bring to our residents, the better. And that is certainly a sort of key driver. As I mentioned earlier, through the demonstrator and wave 1, I think it was quite clear that procurement and routes to market weren't always considered early on in the planning stage. Again, and I probably would say this being the consortium, but please do consider actually how you're going to engage the sector, engage the market, and sort of get out on site. And whether that is through a single source contract, or whether you're going to be looking for a consortia that can interlink things like the framework and the DPS. So one of our sort of key goals under the two routes to market is, if it's a large authority with dispersed housing stock, we could use the framework, the Healthy Homes framework, to contract, say, a turnkey solution, a tier 1 contractor to deliver the core works, but actually use the DPS then to run a secondary procurement to look at local providers who can deliver specialist works under the single source contract, under the framework contract. So actually we can interface the two together and really bring a robust procurement exercise for our members, not just to understand cost and value for money, but also make sure that they're achieving local employment and local growth within their economies. Goes without saying, engage your tenants now. If you are thinking of putting in for wave 3 funding, etc., you should already by now have a clear understanding of what properties you're looking to include within that wave 3. Engage your tenants. A project that we are involved with one of our consultants is currently doing that sort of market engagement or resident engagement, and it is proving to be difficult. It's proving to be difficult partly because of the bad press out there, but also partly because residents don't understand the decarbonisation journey, and there's a lot of good work that's been done out there, but we really do need to engage them quite quickly. The final one for me there is probably the engagement and collaboration. These projects work best when all parties are around the table and talking together. We have some authorities out there who have separated their decarbonisation into not just lots but geographical areas and want to engage multiple contractors. The one good thing that comes from using a consortium is we can bring them all together, bring them around the table and make sure that everybody understands what the key drivers are for our members and move forward with that.